We're in downtown Munich at the Lean Kanban Central Europe conference. David Anderson just finished his keynote presentation and now he will sit with me to answer some of my questions. Okay, David, thanks for your time to discuss with me today about your keynote.
Thank you, thanks for inviting me.
Well, I just enjoyed your keynote speech, in which you showed lots of measurements about Kanban deployments in industry. Maybe not everybody knows the details about Kanban, so can you give a really short elevator pitch about what Kanban is?
So Kanban, of course, is a Japanese word. It literally means a card that's used for signaling an ability to do something. So typically you might decide how much of something you use it to represent a capacity for some scarce resource, and you create cards for that. And in order to perform some work, you need to have possession of a card. So it's used in manufacturing industry for controlling the inventory levels in factories and keeping things flowing. And what we've discovered is that if you use virtual Kanban, so there's no physical cards, but you agree some limit, and you might say this team can only work on 10 user stories at a time, then they can only work on 10 and they can't start another one until they finish one. And that concept of starting something only when you finish and keeping within a limit, that's known as a pull system. And we've discovered that that helps teams to improve their quality, to improve their predictability of delivery, and to generally be more reliable. And it certainly helps avoid overburdening the team. So we've seen some great benefits from adopting this really quite old technique from Japan.
Okay. And in your keynote, you showed that, let's say, in occasions you even add people to a project when you see you need more you need more resources. Well, when I was a long time ago in the university, they told me about Brooks' law, and Brooks' law was adding more people to a late project makes it even more later. So how does it comply to your presentation? Because in fact adding more people should make it more late, according to Brooks' law.
So I think there's a context to Brooks' law, and you have to remember this stuff was written in the 70s and based on experience from the 1960s. The context really is that you don't know it's late until very late in the project life cycle, and therefore reacting to late breaking news that the project will be late is hard. And hiring new people, expanding the team has a cost to it. You have to take people off the project to recruit the new people. They have to onboard them, train them. They all have to get to know each other. And that of course, is very challenging. And often people will underestimate just how many extra people they need in order to compensate for the cost. So that's all very well. What we're seeing with teams doing Kanban and all the data that we collect is that you get very early information about whether you're running to plan or not. Therefore you can react early, and there's sufficient data to also to help you measure the impact of hiring the new people, bringing them on board. So we can really put some science into it and make sure that the teams and managers can react early, and they can react with sufficient magnitude in order to catch up the lost time.
So in fact it's not really adding people to a late project, but discovering early on what the project size should be, what the team size should be.
Discovering early on and having enough data to know what the capability is and what it might be if you add extra people, and what the cost will be while you go through that transition of adding the extra people. And if you have all that information and you have ways of modeling it, then you can be scientific about it. And I wouldn't say it breaks Brooks' law. What we're really doing is breaking the context. We're changing the context to a context where we can actually react in an effective way.
So another piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, David, thanks for your time. You really inspired me by this idea of the Kanban to discover lateness early. I'm going to write about this. Thanks for your time.
Very good. Thank you very much.
If one thing is becoming clear nowadays, is that for companies it's not a question whether they will be agile, or need to be agile, but when they need to be agile. So in the consideration to build up an agile company, it's always the question, should we do it in a big way or should we do it small? Should we do a big bang transition or should we do it small evolutionary? Well, it's pretty clear, and you read a lot about it, that Kanban is of the latter type, where you start small and you just make small changes to make things better. But one of the things triggered me by listening to David, and that Kanban seems to defy Brooks' law. Because Brooks' law says you should never add people to a late project because it makes it even more late. And this is in fact what David does. He says, well, you do the work and then you will find out and then you will add more people if you need it for the date. But I think it's a little bit different. I mean, what I hear from him, it's not finding out late how many people you need, but as soon as possible. So he says you have to find out as early as possible how many people you need. So, in fact, he says you learn more from doing than you learn from thinking. And of course, that's one thing we have learned from applying Agile in the past years. So, listening to the original question, should we start small or should we start big? There's a clear answer. Yes, you need to start. And Frans, have you taped it?
Yeah, Rini, it's a wrap.
And what do you think about it?
Well, I like the idea, but I don't think so we should tell this my wife, man. It gets me bankrupt.
Oh, why?
Well, she thinks all week about shopping. What do you think will happen if she actually does it?
This videoblog is sponsored by Awareness.